Welcome back to another episode of Building Up Your Business, the podcast. I'm Erica Dill, your host from Operationally Up. Remember, we're here to help your e-commerce and consumer goods business scale and gain more profitability. This Building Up Your Business podcast is all for you entrepreneurs, you business owners out there. So remember, from bombs to order fulfillment, marketing to taxes, learn the stuff from the pros before you step in it. And today's pro is another fantastic resource. Keith Finger is here to tell us all about, well, I'll tell you in a second. With a proven track record of driving growth for B2B companies across diverse industries, his experience implementing customer success programs and navigating complex sales cycles spans more than 20 countries, giving him unique insight into challenges of B2B revenue generation and retention. After 25 years of B2B marketing experience, Keith is now the founder and chief revenue strategist at Revenue Insight. Keith, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Great to be here, Erica. And I would love to have you do every intro for me. That would be wonderful. Thank you. Thank you.
No problem. I'll just follow you around and be like, and this is Keith Finger.
That would be, or I'll just play it on my phone before I talk.
I like that too. I'll record one just special for you. So Keith is the perfect person to join us today to talk about how to unlock the customer journey and growth revenue. Now, all of us out there are very keen and focused on our customers. We know that without them, we cannot have sales or much less a business. So the important thing that we're talking about today is really understanding how the customers go through that buying process. And Keith's going to help us unlock that. So Keith, let's hit it off with a bang. We're talking about the customer journey. And I think a lot of people, when they think customer journey, they're thinking about, once the customer is here, they're in my shop on Etsy or on Shopify, or they're here talking to my sales rep. Now the customer journey starts. But I know that's not the case. So help us explain that. Keith, give us more information.
Sure. The customer journey is the proverbial journey that the customer takes from just the beginning of understanding they have a problem or a need that might lead them to your product, all the way through to retention and advocacy. So the journey actually has 5 different parts to it. You've got awareness, consideration, purchase, onboarding, and retention and advocacy. And whether you know it or not, all of those are pretty much part of almost every purchase decision a company makes, a person makes, whether it's a B2B company or a B2C company. And a company needs to be aware, a seller, a vendor needs to be aware of the customer journey, because we want the customer to have the least friction they can in their buying process, in the onboarding process, in the retention process. Friction is bad, not just for sales, but for retention. And so when you understand the customer journey, you're being customer centric, and you are also lessening the friction that causes people to either go to another seller during the purchase or the consideration process, or once they become a customer, they leave because now the magic left went away once they were in house. Nobody's really being a good steward of their activities as a new customer. Important thing to realize is that the journey is different for B2B and for B2C. Now the different elements might be the same, but the sale is different. For instance, B2C buyers, really short sales cycles. When we go to the store and we're buying a refrigerator, we're buying a car, maybe the car has a little bit longer sales cycle because the dollar amounts are, but usually our sales cycles are pretty short. We're talking about hours or maybe just days. Also, the only people who we're talking to are just our family members or friends, perhaps. Those are the only people we need to get involved with in our sale. And also the dollar amounts are typically much lower. In B2B, the sales cycle is usually long. Companies will take 90 days, 6 months, a year to make decisions. Also, the dollar amounts much greater, millions of dollars, potentially billions if you're doing big infrastructure projects.
Sure.
Also, there's many more people involved in the process compared to B2C. You've got a buying committee that might have 8, 10, 12 people, not just from that department, but representing legal, representing IT, different parts of the organization. And all those people, all those different parts, also you need to be aware of how they're going through the journey as well, because they have their own needs and they have information that they need to see as well. The last part is that typical B2B purchases, there's an ROI component to it. Most of us, we buy something at the store, a bottle of, Tide detergent. The ROI is like, okay, it'll make my clothes clean. That's all it is. But companies, when they're deciding to make a purchase, what am I going to get out of it financially? How is it going to increase my sales or decrease my costs? So there's usually a big ROI component, a big value proposition component that is driving those purchases. And lastly, I'll say the issue that is creating this to begin with, usually for companies, is something that is competitive or trends in the marketplace or linked some other way to some sort of corporate objective, corporate goal. While mostly for B2C purchases, it's, hey, I want to look good for the party coming up, or I need a new car, I want to feel good, or I need to go on a trip to clear my mind, or something. The goal is not so much driven by some sort of higher objective in the household. It's something else going on that's a little bit lighter than a B2B purchase.
And that makes sense. And, one of the things that if you've listened to this podcast before, one of my soapboxes is that people buy with emotions. They buy emotions. They don't buy things. And one of the things that I'm understanding from you is that when you're doing a B to C sales cycle, that emotion's going to be stronger. But when you're doing a B2B sale, there's still emotion there. It's just very different and much lighter and more focused on ROI, like you're saying. Would you say that's accurate?
For sure. Different type of emotion, but still there is emotion there because, there used to be the saying, nobody gets fired for buying AT&T or nobody gets fired for buying IBM back in the day. So people are still, there's still emotion because people are, they've got their careers, they want to do the right thing. So all through the journey, one of the big things that you want to know as a company is what are the emotions that people are having and how are they feeling at different points? Is there frustration? Is there anger? What are their concerns? And this applies, from awareness all the way through to retention. In the beginning, when you're in the awareness stage, the buyer has just become aware literally that they have this problem that they have to solve. So you want to know, through interviews with past customers and current customers, what was it like in that time frame? What were you thinking? How did you voice the problem? How did you think of the problem? Also in awareness, people are starting to look at different solutions. Where did they go for the solutions? Who did they talk to? Who internally did they start having conversations with? Then once they move to consideration, that's where things really heat up, where they're looking at different vendors and they're going to start shortlisting and they're really diving into the ROI and the value proposition. They're starting to get a consensus internally about which direction is best from different vendors. Who do people like and why? There are still emotions there. They're not so much like, wow, I'm so happy that I got this new necklace, but there's concern. Nobody wants to make the wrong decision. As they move into the contract phase, into purchase, you find people starting to get an increase in confidence because they've been spending a lot of time trying to figure out who's the right vendor, what's the right solution. They think they're going to do the right thing. They've got the legal people involved now. They're doing detailed demos. They're really getting into the nitty-gritty of who the right vendors might be. So there's excitement that they're getting to the end of this, a little anxiety, but there's definitely a shift that this thing is going to, move to the next phase, and there might be the next group of people who might even be taking over within the company. So then when they move to, after the purchase is done, the next phase is onboarding. And it's really important for companies to have communicated, probably during the purchase phase, what onboarding looks like, because you want that to go very smoothly. Again, understand what are the emotions, what are the touch points, just like in every part of the journey. What are the touch points that people are having, and where can they go one way or another? How do you make the touch point smoother? How do you make it better? And so in onboarding, let people know up front what it's like, what the impact is going to be, who their contacts are. If you can, give them a quick win so that you get them on your side, rather quickly. What is something that you can do that really gives them a boost of confidence that they made the right decision and that things are going to go well? And then finally, there is retention and advocacy. This is an area where sometimes the ball gets dropped because they think, wow, companies think we've done the hard stuff. We've gotten the customer now. They're on board. The money's coming in. They're on autopilot. And nothing can be further from the truth. You have to work hard at customer retention, just as you did to keep people in. And it's especially important because once people have been a client for a little bit, they start to understand. They start to see the ROI. They start to see the value proposition bubble up. You want to be able to have them do reviews and case studies and things like that. That doesn't happen if customer retention is not going well. So having a well thought out customer retention program, sometimes it means having people become part of customer advocacy groups for new customers or for current customers. So all along the process there, from awareness to consideration, purchase, onboarding, retention and advocacy, you need to know what the touch points are and how you can make the ones that are kind of rough go away, and the ones that are going really well, how do you duplicate that throughout the organization?
And that's a perfect segue into what I want to talk about more. Is we're talking about those touch points and really understanding that customer journey. And if we go back to the awareness phase, you had mentioned taking surveys and a way to understand your customers. Give our listeners a little bit more detail about how can they really have an impact on customers as they're just starting to figure out what that problem actually is. What tips and tricks do you have for our listeners?
Well, when you're starting to figure out how you attack the journey problem or how you look at doing it, there's kind of an acronym that you would follow, and it's DARMA, D-A-R-M-A. First of all, it's define the problem that you're looking to figure out. A is analyze, so you're going to analyze what you already have for data. What do you have for customer data? What do you have for operational data? What do you already have for behavioral data that will kind of fill you in on where some things are going well and not going well already? R is research, so this you're going to do your heavy duty research and look at what do you need to do that you already don't know. What can you do for surveys, doing customer forms online, maybe one-on-one interviews, where you can get greater insight into things that you don't already have. Then R is you're going to review what you have done in your research. You're going to look at the results. You're going to categorize them. And then A is you're going to act on that. You're going to take what you've learned, and that's going to go out to the different departments throughout the company who have been, hopefully, they really need to be part of this up to this point, because the customer service people will have insights and the ability to insert surveys or feedback at certain points in their process. Certainly, salespeople will be able to give information on, from the CRM on how people are progressing through the website and the sales process. So then, all this information will go back out to those teams for them to act on. But I need to mention that one thing is, an important thing is to realize the people who are going through this, from the customer standpoint, they're not faceless people, just numbers or just a demographic. you're going to create what's called a persona. And a persona puts kind of the bones and the skin and gives more life to the individuals who are your typical buyers. So, if your typical buyer is, let's say, an accounting manager or a controller, your persona might be, you're going to give it a name. You might say, it's Mary, 38-year-old controller, been in the field for 15 years, doing finance. Her responsibilities are XYZ. Her concerns in her job are this. The emotions that she has around doing her job are, wanting to please the CFO and moving up in the company and not wanting to make a mistake. I'm just sort of like making this up here, but there are emotions and concerns. And also you want to know, as people have gone through the process in the past, what are their emotions at different points? And you're going to get that from interviews that you'll do of people who have already been through.
Okay. That makes sense. Especially, we talk a lot about surveys when we're talking, especially in B2C, you can very easily conduct surveys as well. And so really that gives you a lot of insight into where that customer's head is at and what are their motivating factors. And that's where a company can gain more information about how to be persuasive or how to approach their customers during, I'm assuming, both the awareness and the consideration phase. Do those two kind of have some overlap as far as how you would approach the customer journey?
Oh, for sure. There is a lot of similarity. The important thing to know is to just, there's sort of an art and a science to finding out this information, because you can know from looking at some metrics from the website where people kind of fall off. So the metrics will frequently tell you what happened, but it won't tell you why it happened. And that is where having conversations with your customers, and it's going to be somebody who's already been through it, because it's kind of awkward to have this conversation with someone who you're selling to. So we noticed you didn't look at this webpage. Why did you not do that as we're trying to sell you now? You're not going to do that. But having in-depth conversations with people, and customers will give you this because they want you to succeed. I can easily spend 30 minutes, 60 minutes talking with a customer. I've set it up ahead of time so that they're aware of what the time frame is. But I'm being very pointed in asking them this information, so I'm getting the most time out of it. But you want to understand, who, in the beginning, for instance, who are they talking to? Where did they go? What type of information did they find most helpful? What did the company have? You might be able to share some other information that you have that you find that people aren't looking at. What do they think about that? Was that not helpful to them? You could talk about the sales cycle and how perhaps why did it take so long? Do they find to have that length of a sales cycle? Because many times a company will try to force their sales cycle or their process on the customer, and the customer is like, don't do that to me, because we have our own way of doing it. So there's a fine line between recognizing that the customer has their own sales cycle and pushing them to do something too fast because it's the way that you want to do it, because you've got your own numbers that you've got to meet.
Yeah. So
there's definitely the need to be respectful of that. But sometimes, it's simply because they don't have the information that they need. But if you have these conversations again and you say, who typically is in your, who is in your buying process?
Yeah, who's in the buying process?
What information do they need? When you were at the outset, asking them, how long did you think the process would take? And what drove that time frame? Was there anything that we could have done to make it shorter or make things more convenient or more efficient for you, things that we could have done better? And sometimes this is like a tough conversation for some companies to have. The salesperson, if you're the salesperson and this customer is your responsibility after the sale, sometimes salespeople, they're just like, I don't want to bring up bad things with my customers. Yeah. And it also requires somebody who's really empathetic. That's another thing. Whoever is gathering this information and is talking with customers, that person needs to be empathetic, and they need to be an active listener, and they need to kind of have a good eye for looking at things and connecting the dots and wondering, okay, what if we made a tweak here? What could that do? They have to have a good sense of putting themselves in the shoes of the customer and seeing what the process might be like from their perspective. It's empathy. It's being empathetic.
And that's a great tip so that our listeners really understand how to be successful when they're performing these types of surveys. Because it does take a very specific type of person. You don't just want anybody doing them. And you want to make sure that you're asking the right questions so that you can get down to the nitty gritty. And having those follow-up questions is going to be more successful when you have the right person executing on those surveys. So, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that this also extends to after the sale and having sort of a long-term strategy for collecting information. Like creating the customer journey map, that's like a project. And at a certain point, it'll become an ongoing project. You'll be looking at statistics and KPIs going forward to see how things are playing out, because things will always change. Touch points will have more friction and less friction, things will happen. But the next project is to put in place ongoing feedback mechanisms so that you always have this information.
Yeah. And that's so key, is to keep having that information, especially because retention is a part of the customer journey. So understanding as the customer goes through that things may change, and this is how you're going to maintain a customer long term, is so important. One of the things that you mentioned is customers want you to succeed. So when your customer has gone through the journey and you're asking them questions, you're asking successful customers. How do you maybe go about or collecting data from customers who didn't successfully go through the process? Because I'm assuming their insight would be just as valuable.
Excellent point. Excellent point. So that's actually a part of the information gathering experience that a company needs to have post customer journey. It needs to be part of their strategy going forward, and it usually resides someplace in the sales and marketing arena, and that is understanding from people who did not buy, who will still talk to you. And I'm not saying that they won't talk to you because they're mad at you, but sometimes it can be a awkward conversation if it's the salesperson. Some sales departments do that very well. Some of them, it's just not in their wheelhouse to have it. So they'll have an outside person. I've done this, for example, where I've been hired to ask of people who didn't buy, why did this happen? And I can ask the question because I'm a third party. Neutral, they didn't have the conversations with me, and I'm simply like, hey, I've been asked by the client. We would like to learn a little bit more what we could do better that we didn't do well to land you as a client. Just if I could get a few minutes of your time, we'd love to do that. And so I'll just have that conversation about what is it that the company could have done better for you to be a client. Was it something about the salesperson? Was it certain information was lacking? I find that it's usually somewhere in there's four things. It's either could be the salesperson, they just didn't gel with the salesperson. The company could be too big and they're afraid that the salesperson, they're afraid the company won't service them because they're kind of a small client in a big pool. Company is too small and just doesn't have the resources to do it. Or it's something about the product, the ROI, the value proposition. It just didn't ring true. It just didn't land. And it just happens to be something where I found that it kind of falls into one of those four categories.
Well, and as one thing to remember is we're talking about the customer journey in terms of B2B, but a lot of these things do overlap into the B2C category. When you're talking about a survey or, an interview with a customer, it's very easy to put together a survey of here's the product. Did you buy it? Did you not buy it? Why did you buy it? What do you like about it? If you didn't buy it, why didn't you buy it? What about it is not to your needs? Does it not fit what you were looking for? Is it too expensive? So there are ways that these strategies apply to both B2B and B2C.
Yeah,
Correct.
yeah. One thing that I tell people to be careful about. We've all done surveys that were really long. You
Yes, yes.
and you get that. I call it the progress bar of death, where
Yeah.
you do the first page and then it's like 2% completed, and you're like, all
Boop.
right, I'm out of here. You know. So
Yeah, I'm gonna say I've taken a few of those where I've just dumped out because I'm like, I don't have time for this.
right, or they have the other thing I love. Actually, I'm not really I love, but I see a lot is the first part of the survey is really quick and easy, 3 or 4 easy questions, and then the second page and all the following pages they have like a matrix with 6 questions and like 8 different choices, and you're like, I'm not going through all this. So it's really important to make sure that your survey design is pre-tested. You want to know, just like you want to know in your journey, is there friction? Is there friction in your survey materials? Because there's nothing worse than sending something out to people and it just lands flat. So when I do work with customers, I'm trying to, and they ask me to talk to their clients. I am
Mm-hmm.
pre-testing that. I'm testing that survey so that I know, are there issues that maybe are causing it not to people go all the way through the survey. I've done enough that I pretty much know how many questions people will answer. I know pretty much how to phrase things, but I'm still pre-testing it on a certain number of people because I don't want to send something out and I get a really, really low feedback
Response
rate. In
rate.
fact, yeah,
Yeah.
response rate. In fact, one thing I do sometimes is we will offer the people who respond. Let's say it's a client. Clients are always busy. Whether it's the client's client, my client's clients, and I know they're really busy, but we'll offer them maybe a gift card of a certain amount for
Mm-hmm.
completing it. Or I've done things where we'd say, like, if you for every response we get, we'll make a donation to the
Oh
charity.
yeah.
One of these 3 charities. The charities are very general, nothing that's controversial, but we'll do that on your behalf to help, to encourage feedback.
Yeah, that's great. And I love the whole charity option because who can't get behind that? And, it's feeding kids of America. Who's going to say no?
Right, right.
So, with the remaining time, I wanted to ask, is there, what is another, other than doing like surveys, what is another way that our listeners can really understand how to reach our customers during that customer journey?
Well, if you really want to get the best info, I'm a big fan of one-to-one conversations because
Okay.
you will find information that is more enlightening that you can get from a lot of comment cards or some sort of pop-up online. I mean,
Sure.
they're all good. They all have their place, but if you can get someone's time for 30 minutes, and again, the conversation can't be driven by some sort of script where it's people checking off, okay, the person said this, they said that, and it sounds very mechanical. But having an empathetic listener, and you can ask them, you can ask information like, tell me how when you first had that awareness that you had a problem, or it first presented itself, where did it come from? How did you think about it? What were the words that you used? Because as a marketer, as a salesperson, you want to parrot that back. You want to be able to
Right.
use the way your customer talks about the pain in your materials. You want to know where they go to look for information. Now, some of it you can get this from surveys. You can send customers some of this information. But if you have let's say a customer forum, some sort of customer group who gives regular feedback, they can give feedback on product direction, company strategy, sales and marketing. You will get a lot of great info by having conversations. You can fill it in with some of this other information, but the information that you can get from having conversations about, who are our competitors that you also looked at. What do you like about them? What should we be doing better that we don't know about? one of the questions I love to ask, which sometimes it can be squeamish for my client to have to allow me to do that, is, if my client was a person, how would you describe them? Because you want to get to, that's like the personality of the company, the voice of the company. What's their culture like? If you ask them, what's the culture of this company like? That's kind of squishy. But I like to ask that question because you really learn what people think about them. In fact, I also do employee surveys, and that's one of the questions that I ask. And that gets to the culture of the company. And many times there's a disconnect there, both from customers and employees, from what the management thinks, how they're perceived.
And that's a really great point because, like we said, when people are buying with their emotions, how that company is coming off and how they're being perceived can really connect to that emotional buying. And if that customer is going to connect or jive with that company, so that culture really ends up coming through in that buying process.
Yeah, and again, this goes back to marketing. When somebody looks at the website and looks at the branding, they're going to have a certain impression. And is that impression consistent with how the company wants to be perceived? Or is there a disconnect? Like, we've all seen great websites and great branding, and the customer experience, was sort of lacking. So is there consistency there, or is there something that needs to be improved? When the salesperson took over, was the salesperson again reflective of that customer experience, or was there something that was incongruous between the website and the branding, and then the experience of now having talked to somebody one-to-one?
And that makes total sense. Keith, this has been so insightful and really has given our listeners something to think about and ways that they can actually act on unlocking that customer journey, because that's what we love to do here. We love to give our listeners very tangible things that they can move on. And I think whether they're B2B or B2C, they've gotten exact ways they can move forward. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Enjoyed it. It was great.
Great. Well, my name is Erica. I am your host here from Operationally Up. This podcast is for you so that you can build your business more effectively and efficiently. So remember, from bombs to order fulfillment, marketing to taxes, learn the stuff from the pros before you step in it. And we will be back here in another 2 weeks with another fantastic pro talking about another fantastic topic. And I'm sure that Keith, along with some of our past pros, you're more than willing to give out advice and answer any questions to our listeners. So can I put your contact information in the description below?
Please.
Great. So if you need more information or have any questions about unlocking your customer journey, feel free to reach out to Keith. And we will see you back here in another 2 weeks. Have a fantastic day. Bye.